Okay, we're continuing with Holy Grail of Wisdom quotes by me, P. Rogers, in alphabetical order. Here's Margaret Mitchell. She's the author of Gone with the Wind. She lived from 1900 to 1949. Her father was like the head of the Atlanta History Society, so she had him providing her with all this information about the South. And so she wrote the book Gone with the Wind. It's a masterpiece. It's one of the all-time greatest books of all time. You really learn the truth about what happened in the South in the Civil War. I mean, basically, Lincoln just wanted to rip off the South. That's what happened. Later on, he claimed it was to preserve the Union. It was claimed, to end slavery, but that's not what it was really about. It came down to he had tariffs, and he was ripping off the South. The South said, that's too much, we're not going to pay. Then he said, I'll just, come in and destroy you. And that's what he did. The North had overwhelming industrial power in comparison with the South. And the South were, foolish to go down that path. There was just no way. They had a flood of immigrants coming into the North from Europe. So they had unlimited manpower, unlimited, in comparison, overwhelming, superior industry. South really had no chance. And the South got totally abused. Okay, so here's some quotes from Margaret Mitchell. One of the lines by Scarlett O'Hara, Vivian Leigh was, "Men are so conceited, they believe anything that flatters them." And I'm like, yeah, that's what my ex-wife used to do to me. She'd say nice things to me, and then a little later, can I have some money? Yeah, it took me a while to figure that one out. Okay, then at the end of the book, after everything they've been through, Vivian Leigh was going through a difficult moment there, and she said, tomorrow is another day. And it was a great line, and that's one of the things about the book. You can't help liking Scarlett O'Hara, even though she's a jerk, she's a bitch, all that is true. She's got a lot of spunk. She's a fighter, and she's Irish, and she just wants to survive. So there's something great about that. Okay, one of the last lines of the movie when Rhett Butler, which was Clark Gable, and he was magnificent in his part. He just had enough of Scarlett's BS. She ruined everything. She was such a jerk. She ruined everything. He wanted the marriage to work, and I even said it reminded me of my wife and me. I was like Rhett Butler's Clark Gable, and my wife was like Scarlett O'Hara. She was just making trouble for no reason. And Rhett Butler had enough. He said, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. I'm leaving you. Doesn't matter what you say. Doesn't matter what you do. It's over. And he left. Okay. There's another line here. Hardships make or break people. Oh, this is Margaret Mitchell when she is interviewed about, her thoughts on the book Gone with the Wind and what was she getting at, what was the theme. And she said, if Gone with the Wind has a theme, it is that of survival. What makes some people come through catastrophes and others, apparently just as able, strong, and brave, go under? It happens in every upheaval. Some people survive, others don't. What qualities are in those who fight their way through triumphantly that are lacking in those that go under? I only know that survivors used to call that quality gumption. So I wrote about people who had gumption and people who didn't. And I think some of the points that came out in the book is the people who were not doing so well were always talking about the past, where Scarlett is like, enough about the past. We need to work towards the future, because everybody in the South was really sad, okay? So that was a good point. It was a magnificent book. I kind of picked it up thinking, I'll just give this a try, but it was fantastic. There's like 51 audio CDs. It's so long. And the book was great. And partly what was so good about it was a perspective from a woman, the brain of a woman looking out on the world, how a woman thinks and sees, which, almost all the great books are written by men. It's pretty rare that a woman writes a great book. Ayn Rand had written Atlas Shrugged and, Fountain, Anthem, Return of the Primitive, Romantic Manifesto. But anyways, they weren't so much about how a woman thinks, all right? In this movie, you really see how a woman thinks. And that was interesting to me because I know how guys think backwards and forwards, but seeing how Scarlett O'Hara thought, and she was so much like my ex-wife, I'm like, wow. I wish I'd have known this, 30 years ago before I got myself into a position where I could be manipulated so bad. Okay, next we're going to do Moliere. He's the French playwright. He lived from 1622 to 1673. His real name was Jean-Baptiste Poquelin. Moliere was a stage name, French comedic playwright. His most famous comic play was Tartuffe, about religious hypocrisy. He was an actor in many of his own plays. He said, the most effective way of blocking vice is to expose it to public ridicule. Okay, great. But when you ridicule public vice, a lot of times the ridicule gets shadow banned, not the vice. All right, Moliere continues. If you can make yourself understood, you are always speaking well. The duty of a comedy is to correct men while amusing them. Most people die from the treatment rather than the disease. Yeah, the cure is worse than the disease. Okay, I find medicine the best of all trades because whether or not you do any good, you still get your money. Okay, so that's it for Mitchell and Moliere. I hope you found that helpful.